Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Ancient Warfare Answers with me, Murray. I've got a couple of, one question to answer today. I'm going to do two in a session. You can tell by the same shirt that I do multiple ones at a time. Also, probably the last time that the beard will be seen for some time. I'm shaving it next week, so I'll be shaven by the time you see this. Anyway, no problems at all. Now, the question, of course, you can ask us a question on Patreon. You can back us on Patreon at one of three levels, $1, $5, and $10. Legionary, Optio, and Centurion. You can even get a copy of the magazine digitally or in print. But you can, of course, ask us a question in any way on any forum. Send it to Facebook, send us an email, comment on one of the videos, however you like. Of course, you can send a postcard. One of the earlier episodes has the address, PO Box 222, Belfield in NSW 2191, Australia. That will get to me. If you address it to Murray or Ancient Warfare Answers, I'll be very excited. It'll go behind me. Not one has arrived yet, but as soon as one does, I will be very excited. I'll probably post a special video saying I've got mail. Now, today, the question, I haven't recorded who it's from. I apologize. Hopefully you'll recognize your question. I am reading about Spanish Conquistadors. Since they were unfamiliar with the land, they would capture local tribe members and force them to guide. On many occasions, the guides would deliberately lead them astray to be attacked or direct them away from villages. Are there any notable incidents in ancient warfare where this occurred? Yes, is the very short answer. Several, and it's a really interesting aspect of warfare. One of the other things, of course, about the Spanish Conquistadors' use of tribesmen is that they not only guided falsely, so to speak, but they would also fight the wars with their local enemies using the Spanish Conquistadors as kind of proxy mercenaries to fight their wars for them. Now, in the ancient terms, there's many examples, probably many more than I can give, a little bit nuanced in terms of just guides for leading generals astray. There are examples of that, but there's also some more nuanced examples too. So going all the way back to the earliest Greek literature, of course, in the Iliad, you have the episode of Dolon, who's who basically promises Hector that he will sneak amongst the Greeks dressed in a wolf pelt with a helmet or a felt cap. And he gets captured by Odysseus and Diomedes and immediately betrays the Trojans, especially the arrival of King Rhesus, who's only recently arrived. He's a late arrival to the Trojan War, has the best horses in the land. And of course, Odysseus and Diomedes raid King Rhesus's camp, kill King Rhesus and steal his horses. So in a way, that betrayal wasn't intended, but is very similar in that regard. At the Battle of Kadesh, King Ramses II has two Hittite captives. Now, again, one of the interesting things here, of course, is how you frame it. They're two captives who give the false information according to Egyptian sources. But if you read it from a Hittite perspective, they are two false spies who do exactly as they're meant to. So in that regard, you've got a sort of different perspective. But at Kadesh, these two Hittites are captured. They pretend to be deserters, and they tell Ramses that the Hittite forces are in fact still far off at Aleppo. And this is completely false intelligence expertly delivered by the Hittites, because, of course, the Hittite army is in fact just encamped behind the mound of Kadesh. So, of course, Ramses camps, gets caught off guard, his army gets caught on the march and only just escapes with probably a Pyrrhic victory, but millennia before Pyrrhus. Anyway, so that one's very much what you're asking about, that you've got a false guide in that sense. Where are the enemy? They're nowhere near, when in fact they are. Of course, at the Battle of Teutoburg Forest in 9 AD, that's exactly the role that Arminius plays, misleading and betraying Varus, the Roman commander, and of course leading him into the Teutoburg Forest, where he gets ambushed and gets over a period of running battles, loses 3 legions. Famously, of course, those 3 legions, 17, 18, and 19, are never met with again, and their numbers are never used again by any subsequent Roman legions. At the Battle of Crassus, at the Battle of Carrhae, Crassus has invaded Parthian territory, and he uses a local chieftain, Ariamenes, who had worked in the past for Pompey. Now, again, you've got a complicated factor there that you've got Crassus, Pompey, and Caesar in the first triumvirate, and Ariamenes has worked for Pompey earlier in the 60s BC, and here in the 50s BC, he betrays Crassus because he's in the pay of the Parthians. And so, indeed, he leads Crassus astray, strands him without water, and completely vulnerable to the Parthian attacks. So that's very much an example of what you're talking about. There are some others which are, I think, similar but complicated. You've got Ephialtes, of course, at the Battle of Thermopylae in 480 BC, who betrays the Greeks by showing the Persians the Anapeia path through Trachis and around the back of Thermopylae to finally get behind the Greek position. That happens again, of course, when the Gauls invade in 279 BC. That they also get shown that path, the same path. You've also got, but that's not quite the same, because obviously that is a traitor actually betraying their home country to the invader. So that's not quite the false. That's an actual guide leading you in the way that they said they would. And again, many of the guides seem to do as they say. Alexander's guides do that. As far as we can tell, the guides for Xenophon's and Abyssus, when they have them, are good. When Demosthenes invades Aetolia, he has the guides. They all get killed, and that's what leads him astray. That's in 426 BC. So there's those. The other ones, of course, are an interesting one. Probably the most famous false traitor is before the Battle of Salamis. You've got the account in Herodotus and Plutarch of Sicinus, who's sent to Xerxes by Themistocles with a false message that the Greeks intend to flee, and therefore the stratagem of Themistocles is to detach some of the Persian fleet in order to trap the Greeks in place. Now, that could in fact be a whole set of complicated issues there, that the Greeks were not intending to flee, and that was a way of splintering the Persian fleet. The Greeks were intending to flee, and that was a way of making sure they stayed and fought. Given how well they fight in the subsequent battle, hard to know if that was the case. So what Herodotus tells us in Book 8, Chapter 75, is that when the Peloponnesians were outvoting him, that is to risk a battle or retreat to the Peloponnese, Themistocles secretly left the assembly and sent a man by a boat to the Persian fleet, ordering him to say the following. The man was Sicinus. He was Themistocles' slave, often translated as servant, and later he's given citizenship of Thespiae. But he is told by Themistocles to say, the Athenian general has sent me without the knowledge of the other Hellenes. He is on the king's side and prefers that your affairs prevail, not the Hellenes. I am to tell you that the Hellenes are terrified and plan flight, and you can now perform the finest deed of all if you do not allow them to escape. They do not all have the same intent, and they will no longer oppose you. Instead, you will see them fighting against themselves, those who are on your side against those who are not. After indicating this to them, he departed. So, of course, there's a whole set of complicated issues there. Is Themistocles betraying the Greeks? They then win the battle. He's a hero for making them fight and winning the fight. There's all sorts of things going on. Once had a lecturer who believed that in this section, Themistocles is absolutely being framed as the Odysseus of the Persian Wars by Herodotus. So in that sense, you indeed have a traitor who gives the information to the Persians, who absolutely believe that information, and that information ends up being false. But whether it was false when it was given, or when it ends up being false because the Greeks do fight and win the battle, and therefore you're rewriting history after the result of your battle, is hard to say. Depends on what side you come down on, Athens and Themistocles in that regard. Similarly, another Athenian is Alcibiades, who, when the Athenian expedition is in Sicily, they move against Messina, where they've got secret allies within the city, and they expect it to betray Messina to the Athenians. Alcibiades, however, according to Thucydides, already knows he's going to be outlawed, and so he wants to get on the good side of the Syracusans, and so he tells them what the Athenian plan is, and therefore Messina is not betrayed to the Athenians. So you've got an internal traitor there rather than a external one. But all of them have that sort of same kind of idea of people leading you astray without your knowledge, and therefore the result is defeat or victory, depending on which viewpoint you look at it, or almost victory in the case of the Battle of Kadesh. So there are probably lots of other examples of the similar things happening in ancient warfare and indeed medieval warfare and ever since. But that, of course, is another podcast, probably much longer than the 10 minutes I've allotted myself. So thank you for joining me on another episode of Ancient Warfare Answers. We will see you again soon. Thanks. Bye.